The Internet are a California R&B soul based group that have plenty of members and have been around for quite some time now. Ego Death was their breakthrough record, an album that I actually quite liked a lot more than I thought I would have. Typically this moody, vibey type stuff doesn't quite get to me in a lot of ways that it would with other people. You know, those kind of artists on the OVO label, Division, Party Next Door, even some of Drake's tracks on Scorpion that are attempting to set this kind of mood, atmosphere. Even an artist like Sir, who is on the TDE label, didn't quite do it for me either. However, though, the Internet managed to capture it on Ego Death. I thought the only track that wasn't quite fitting was the opening track, which is a bit weird because the opening track's usually the tone setter, but I thought that was a bit of a messy start to the album. But everything else I thought was really solid on that album. If I were to rate it, I'd go 7.5. It's not quite a great album, but it's heading in the right direction. And so I thought Hive Mind could have been the place where they sort of fix things up slightly, add a bit more oomph to it, perhaps a little bit more of a pop to the tracks, and we would have got a great album. However, the only thing that's slightly different this time around, I'd say, is Steve Lacy's bass lines. It's basically Ego Death with a bit more groove and bass to it. Which, if you have been paying attention recently, Steve Lacy has got some of the best bass lines in the game. Fucking hell, Jesus Christ, this guy on Raven Lenae's EP was fantastic. He has been doing work with Kali Uchis, Tyler the Creator last year as well. The guy has been all over, just putting in his influence, his musical talent in as many places as he possibly can, and it got me excited to see where the Internet could go from here, because this guy, if he gets on more albums in the future, could have a huge impact on how bass and more added instrumentation gets infused into modern R&B and hip hop, which could elevate it to new heights and more success. I genuinely do think his influence is that good, and my praise for him is definitely warranted. I mean, I feel like he's basically like the new Thundercat, because when Thundercat started out, everyone was raving about how his bass line sounded, and of course he ended up working with Kendrick Lamar on To Pimp a Butterfly, and we saw how that album turned out. However, though, I just don't think this album's turned out the way I wanted it, and I'm not really quite sure why. I think it has all the sort of ingredients to make something great, but it just didn't quite amount to something that I can fully say I'm in love with. And Steve Lacy's impact is only really, like, minor on this album in a way that really disappoints me, because I thought it was going to have a huge influence on the way this album sounded, but I can only mention a handful of songs where the bass really pops and sticks out, and those tracks actually end up being the best ones. I think the one word to describe this album is empty. Like, throughout this entire thing, we just go in a very flat journey that ends up amounting to very little. There's barely much to it. There's not much that sticks out and makes you go, wow. It just kind of goes in one ear, out the other. It really didn't quite impact me the way I wanted it to. Come together as a pretty stellar opener, I must say. It's much better than the Ego Death opening track, which is already positive. I mean, it's got a really nice bass to it, bum bum bum. Of course, setting a really nice introduction to the record. And the singing from Sid here is actually really nice. It's quite sultry and a bit sensual, and it really fits the instrumentation incredibly well and ends up being quite catchy, despite it being a very low-key sounding song. Come Over is an incredibly melodic track. Absolutely amazing instrumental on this one. It's absolutely catchy. Sid's singing is nice too. I think the thing that holds it back for me is some of the lines in this song are a little bit corny, to be honest. Like, I don't know, I just feel like if it was a male singing this about a girl, we'd be calling it corny, so I hold a female singer to the same standards, to be honest. Saying things like, you're beautiful. Be honest, you're just saying all this to get in their pants, it's fine, just be upfront about it. But it does work as a nice, no strings attached hookup song, and the sound of the song is actually one of the best here, so I can't fault it too much. And yeah, I mean, I guess other than that, occasionally we do get these nice instrumentals that sound really fresh, and warm to the ears, but it's kind of all they really do. Like, I don't really think the smoothness of this album amounts to a very satisfying soul album. I just feel like sometimes everything feels pushed to the back, you know? Like, nothing's really the center focus. It's just all kind of there for background music. I feel like the internet is literally here to do that. And if that is what they're trying to do, then that's fine, but it doesn't really feel that great of a listen, because for me, I just don't want background music. I want something up front, you know? It's also not very varied, this album, either. I mean, considering how talented all these members are, you'd expect something to come through that would be a little different and offer something more than just background noise. And I kind of want more from Sid as a singer too. I mean, her solo album was pretty much this. It was basically just really slowed down R&B that had no personality to it whatsoever, and she's kind of just giving us that same thing here once again. Like, there's got to be more to her than this. I mean, even Come Over showed a different side to her vocals and a little bit more melody, but that's just one time. They could have tried adding more of that throughout the record. I also want to point out how the beat goes on reminds me way too much of the Talking Heads too. I don't know if it's a reference or anything there, but you know, it's one of those things that's a bit too similar for me to enjoy without thinking of the original. Yeah, it really put me off quite a bit. But one thing I can say about that track though, it did try something different, and it was a little bit of a change of pace in comparison to the rest of the album. So I can't really critique it too much. But yeah, other than that, there's not a whole lot to say in regards to this album. It actually reminds me a lot of the Now Now by the Gorillaz. It's just there as sounds to listen to. It really doesn't have much substance to it apart from that. At points it's pretty decent, and when it gets to those heights it's really quite enjoyable, but they're just so few and far between, man. Like, I really needed more than just a couple of tracks on this album. So yeah, it's quite a disappointing follow-up to Ego Death, I think. All the talent is there, it's all there laid out in front of us, but it's just not being used to the best it can be, and it's really quite a shame. So I'm going to go 5.5 out of 10. If you like this album though, I do hope you did, and you can let me know why in the comments. If you don't like this album, let me know as well. If you agree, disagree, whatever, comment below. Subscribe to the channel, and yeah, hope you have a good day. The beat goes on, and the beat goes on, and